Welcome to the Raise podcast. I'm Carol Barwick. We're here to raise your confidence and inspire your creativity. Each episode, we will have a different guest who will be discussing our Raise word. The Raise word is a word that will encourage you or empower you and at times inspire you to explore the word a little more for yourself. Well, hello everybody and welcome to the Raise podcast. I'm Carol Barwick. We are in the thick of the summer holidays. It's very nice and warm out there today. And my guest is a great guest who's done something really interesting around educating. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Brendan Mannion. Hi, Brendan. How are you doing?
Hiya, Carol. I'm doing fine, thanks. Thanks for having me on today. I'm looking forward to it.
You're so welcome. Brendan, I introduced us in terms of being in the middle of summer because there's ice cream vans going past the window. My son is playing noisily on his Xbox. You may also have things going on, so I just want the listeners to know there may be extra sound going on today.
I do have a neighbour who likes to play his music. I think he thinks he's the DJ for the whole area, but he does like to play his music loud
That's
at any
lovely. And
time of
that's what
day.
you want, isn't it? You just want someone else to impinge their music on you, impose even their music on you, particularly when you're wanting to relax outside.
And especially when you're trying to record something like this as well.
Yes, that's lovely. So if you do hear any music, we don't have any rights to it. If you hear the ice cream van, everybody knows that if the music's playing, it means it's leaving. Yes, there may be gaming going on too, but there we go. Brendan, before we go into all that we're going to talk about today, what does our word visibility mean to you?
Visibility. So yeah, from my perspective, there's probably two versions of visibility that I'll probably speak about today. One is about representation. So I know we'll get into this, but I'm a home educating parent to my daughter, and home education is obviously it's not the norm. So visibility for ways of life that are perhaps not the norm. People maybe don't have the greatest understanding of something that is different to what they maybe do. So yeah, visibility and representation, I suppose those two words go hand in hand. And then because of the project I've been working on recently, visibility also comes to how do you get a message out about something different, something away from the norm. If you're outside of the mainstream with something, how does that message get heard? So, you know, being able to speak to you on a podcast like this is one of those ways, I suppose.
Mm. Super. And I mean, I love what you said about from your perspective, because I think that is very much visibility, isn't it? It's saying, this is my perspective and I'm making it visible to you because there's lots of different ways of doing things. And as you said, home educating isn't the norm, but my goodness, it's becoming more and more of an important way of working with our children and young people, I think. Tell us a little bit about why you've chosen to home educate and how that kind of works with the visibility stuff.
Yeah, of course. So, I think obviously we're still in the sort of the memory of the COVID and lockdown era of life, and a lot of people had an experience of educating or schooling from home, where their children couldn't go to school if they usually did go to school. So I think in the past few years, there's definitely been um, a slight change in people's perceptions because it might have been something nobody had any uh, relationship to, and now maybe they have gone through that sort of temporary period. But what is funny from people I've spoken to about it is that's very different to what people like myself and my wife who have we call it elective home educating. We always chose to do it. It's not been something that has come to us from necessity, schools are closed, you have to do it at home. So it's always been a choice. in that sense. So yeah, we chose to do it just from personal experiences and thoughts around what we would want. We chose it before we were even planning to have a child. It was one of those things we discussed as when we were young and free and not parents, but
Oh,
sort
I
of
remember those days.
yeah, do you remember? So those I idyllic days when you say your life will not change when you have children, you'll
Of
still
course, yeah.
do everything we've always done, just
Yeah.
with a child in tow.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, we always liked the idea, just if it was possible for us to do so, that we could that we could take more of a hands-on approach to educating a child or children if we had them. So I suppose the reasons behind that were that we've seen examples, I think, of people who have gone down that route. There are some sort of celebrities, people that you hear about who don't necessarily just go to school uh, and go through the usual steps. I know recently the Olympics have been on. Someone like Sky Brown in the
Mm,
skating for Team GB. She has a very flexible schooling. She's across two different countries for different parts of the year. Spends a lot of her time focused on her skill and talent that's got her to be a a medalist at the Olympics.
yeah.
And I can see that that's not necessarily something she could have done if she was in
Yeah.
school in the
Yeah.
standard way.
Mainstream. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, in the mainstream way. And it's not to say that there's anything we see anything wrong with that. It's just a decision we've taken, and I think that it's a proactive decision we've taken. So a lot of people we speak to who maybe don't understand home educating might not even realize that there is an option. You
Mm,
know, you get to a certain age and your child gets to a certain age and they go to school.
mm.
Start with nursery, they go to school, college, potentially university. That's just the route.
It's kind of the
Uh,
system, isn't it? They
it's the
go through the
system.
system. Yeah.
And yeah, so it was one of those things where we could take a choice to try and do something differently and see if it worked for us. And so far, we've got our daughter's 6. So far, it is working for us. It it lends a flexibility to life. And again, post-COVID, a lot of people maybe have more flexibility of working if you're in the sort of office environment type
Yeah.
jobs as I am. You might work from home more. There might have just been a lot more flexibility. People have meetings over uh, various video conferencing solutions now instead of having to all meet in in the office and things like
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
So things like that have made life as a home educator easier because it means I can be more flexible. I can act as taxi driver to my wife and daughter to take them to events and groups and things like that that they do.
Mm.
So I don't know if that answers your original question, but
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and from what I've seen of your daughter and the things that your wife shared on Facebook about her educating journey, it feels like she has been very visible in her own right, whereas maybe um, children that go to school and go through the system become one of just a cohort, a group of people, and they just all kind of do the same thing. And but it feels like your daughter's been visible in terms of her creativity, what she's been enabled to do.
yeah,
And was that a conscious decision, do you think?
yeah, I think that does bring us back to visibility because yeah, one thing for us is um we do try and share what we do with our daughter because we think that it puts out that positive message that
Mm,
um home educated children do socialize, they do have
yeah,
a wealth of experiences that um they get to take part in. It isn't sitting at home and
mm,
emulating school at home. A
yeah,
lot of people will refer to homeschooling.
yeah,
So that visibility of showing the wider world, the majority of our friends on Facebook and things like that. Majority of them, their children go to school. We do have a lot
mm,
of friends who home educate that through being in that world. But yeah, so the visibility of what do we do? What does our daughter do? And yeah, she gets to choose and have more say, I think, than
mm,
potentially a child who goes to school. And again, none of it's ever about comparing and saying one is better than the other. Like with anything in life, if you make a choice to do something one way rather than the other way,
mm.
you're not sort of knocking the other way. It's just something that works better for you.
Yeah,
And a lot of
yeah,
home educators, again coming to visibility, a lot of people come to home education not through initial choice like we did, but because their child hasn't worked well in school, that
mm,
environment doesn't work for them. A lot of kids with additional needs and things like that, a one size fits all model through
yeah,
schools
yeah,
and funding restrictions and all those sorts of things.
mm,
So visibility of it as well, that it can often be kids who are already um, potentially dealing with more than the average kid
yeah,
are also having to take a different path than is the norm.
yeah,
And so that leads me through to the visibility of what do you see in media, what do you see out there in general? Children go to school. That is the
yeah,
norm. Um, that is what you see. That's what you hear. That's what home educated kids see and
yeah.
hear.
Absolutely. And just to go back to your daughter, what's lovely is it's not at all about your family unit saying, "Oh, look what we're doing, aren't we great?" It's just it's celebrating your daughter, and I think that's
Mm,
wonderful. And I think um, the cohort of children that you're then talking about who need additional support and confidence building and all that kind of thing, the danger is for them that they become invisible because they're in a group expected to do what everybody else is doing, and and some of them will get lost, or some of them will
mm.
be booted out because their behavior doesn't fit in with the norm of school and how school, a school system operates.
That's it. Yeah.
Um, and so I think that's fantastic. So one of the main reasons we've got you on here is because you have done something very concrete about making home education visible. So tell us all about your amazing book, please.
Yeah, so I have written a children's book called Home Ed Fred, and it is about a young girl similar to my daughter called Winifred, shortened to Fred, um, who is a home ed kid. And the book centers on her basically in a situation like my daughter's been in lots of circumstances. She's in a playground, there's other kids there, and one of the first questions is, which school do you go to?
Mm,
And it starts from that point, and it starts with the other children looking a bit confused and not really understanding when she says, "Oh, I don't go to a school. I'm home educated." And then the journey of the story in the book is home ed Fred telling the other kids what she gets up to, how her days are spent, how she learns, how she has fun, and they come to an understanding that they do similar things, that they find the same things fun, they find the same things challenging, and ultimately, hopefully, everybody loves learning and loves to have fun. And by the end of it, they realize there's not much difference between them. They're still all in the same playground, wanting to have
mm,
fun together. Um, so that's kind of the story of Homemade Fred. Um, how I got to writing it was similar to what I was just mentioning. We have hundreds of books. We're a book family. We've
mm.
got more books than we'll ever read in our lifetimes in our house. We're very privileged to have that. But yeah, I scour bookshops and charity shops and everything. And so we have lots of books for our daughter and read every day with her or to her. She's at the age where she's reading herself as well. But I haven't found a book on our bookshelves that includes a home educated kid. There's no
Mm.
stories. Not every children's book is about kids.
Yeah,
Some of them are about alligators or aliens or
yeah,
whatever. But when they're about children, those kids will go to school. 99% of the
Mm.
time. So my daughter could tell you everything that happens in a school. She knows all about it. Uh, she knows what kids that go to school do, but I
Mm.
don't think that kids that go to school would really know what a home ed kid
Wow.
does
I think
in
you're
the
right.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Until now. Da, da,
until now, da, da, da.
da.
So this book it has two main drivers and I
Yeah.
suppose two main audiences. One, I want there to be representation and visibility in children's books for home educated children. I've always thought representation matters.
Yeah.
Whatever walk of life you're from, to see something that represents you and reflects your life helps you to feel legitimate.
Mm.
And um, I've probably gone through life without much issue in terms of visibility for myself, but we're now in a sort of a chosen way of life that is quite invisible. So
Mm.
yeah, so raising that visibility for, you know, I'd love to see the faces of home educated kids reading this book for the first time and
Yeah.
going, this kid does, what I do. And
Yeah.
what I
Yeah.
will what I will say about home education compared to say a school is there's 101 ways that people home educate. So
No
it's
one's going to home educate the same, are they?
yeah,
Yeah.
so I also do know that some people might look at it and go, well, this doesn't necessarily reflect exactly how
Yeah.
we do it,
Yeah.
but I'm trying, I'm making a start. I'm
Absolutely. And you're making it visible, Brendan. You're starting
Yeah,
a discussion, aren't you? And
that's
that's
it.
how visibility
Yeah,
operates, isn't it?
that's it. And so I suppose the second audience that it's for is for everyone else. So it's I want to see the smile on the face of a home educated kid or a parent being able to say, look, this book represents us, it's representation, but also for those kids who don't understand it, that may have preconceptions, those families that may have preconceptions of what a home ed kid might do or be. And so it's for them as well. It's for everyone. It's for people to just, and we have plenty of books on our bookshelves that we've probably bought specifically because they focus on a subject matter or a culture or a part of life that we aren't privy to or we're not as aware of, just to
Mm.
help build that awareness, make sure that our daughter is aware of things like that. So that's basically what we're hoping this book will do.
It's been great sharing about visibility with Brendan today. If you want to help keep the Raise podcast as visible as possible, then a rating on your favourite music platform really does help us. And please remember to share us with all your friends. You can also see all the other things that Raise does on www.raiseforall.com. Back to the episode. That sounds brilliant, and I love that it's for everyone. Tell us a few of the steps that you went through to make it visible, because we've had lots of different authors on here,
Hmm.
with various books. And the exciting thing and important thing about your book is it's actually in crowdfunder stage at the moment, isn't it? So tell us a little bit about that, because that's one of the key reasons why we tried to get you on here as quickly as possible.
I do really appreciate that as well because yeah, with a crowdfunder, you're sort of you've got a very strict time limit.
Yeah,
I think we've got about 20 days left on it at the moment. So yeah, the process. I wrote this book a while ago. Writing it came quite um, easily to me.
hmm,
I'm not an author by profession, but I have long had sort of hobbyist story writing and things like that. So writing it, because it came from a place of personal experience, it
yeah,
was quite easy to sort of put it down on paper. Um, I'm also a hobbyist illustrator as well. I've got a
yeah,
background in art and design, so I'd sketched out what I wanted. But I couldn't get it over the line in terms of producing something that was profession I felt was professional enough
yeah.
to 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 bring to the world. So it was actually my wife, Kate, suggested, why don't we approach an illustrator to do that side of things for us? So we've worked with a local artist to Leeds called Molly Pukes, and they have years and years of experience in animation and illustration, and they've done kids' books before as well. And they're somebody that we knew through sort of local art and cultural events anyway.
Mm,
So that's been fantastic. My first experience of working in collaboration with an artist in that way. So
yeah,
that has been fantastic. A steep learning curve. It's all about communication. It's all
yeah,
about making sure that we're on the same page, so to speak.
yeah, yeah,
And and so once we were ready with a product that we thought is good enough to sort of get out there, I looked into the different methods you can do print on demand through various services, but it comes with very little fanfare. You just have you don't have any control over the printing and the quality of it and things like that. There's a lot
yeah.
of pros and cons to print on demand. If anybody uh, that has been on your podcast or anybody who's listening that has looked into sort of self-publishing.
Mm,
So yeah, going through a crowdfunder seemed like the most obvious way of gaining some interest, some visibility. There's a
hmm
campaign there. There's a
mm,
lot of sort of fanfare that goes with it,
yeah,
trying to get word out. Um, and that is where we've hit my sort of second definition of visibility and realizing like quite how difficult it is in today's
yeah,
media landscape
yes.
of getting, you know, you could have the greatest message in the world, you could be
Hmm.
producing the greatest art in the world, but if you don't have channels through which to get that message out there, get that
Mm,
art out there,
yeah,
it can languish unseen, unheard,
mm,
and yeah, that's one of the difficulties. I think life is ruled by algorithms
yeah.
and people
So
who
it's
can
just
pay
playing the game, isn't it? It's
playing
all
the
about,
game.
yeah, have you
So
put the right words at the right time in the right order?
yeah,
That's how it
that's it.
seems.
Have you posted to TikTok at the right time? Have you included the right sort of link at the right sort of time? All that sort
Mm,
of stuff.
yeah,
So again, steep learning curve. We've we've done well in some ways. We've not met our target yet, though we've still got lots of days left. So yeah, we kind of we were above 50% after 3 or 4 days, which was
oh,
fantastic.
super, yeah,
Um, we're now in the stage where we are trying to work out the best way to get the message beyond
yeah,
probably those initial primary audience
yeah,
people and to the secondary people.
yeah,
And so yeah, visibility. The book is out there to say, look, this is a way of life. It's it's valid. It's valid for those of you that are living it, and it's valid for those of you that maybe don't understand it, but maybe
mm,
have more of an appreciation of it after reading this book. But then, yeah, visibility of actually being able to get that book in people's
yeah.
hands in the first place.
Yeah, I wonder how many people have thought about from the home education kind of community have thought about doing a book before,
Mm,
but not really known how to go about it and what it might trigger in the
yeah,
future. Because um, the other thing I've really seen from your daughter is she has obviously got your illustrative gene, and so I'm
yeah,
excited to see what she may come up with in the future. But how many children and young people who are being home educated have got this wealth of creativity and skills that at this point could go into books and music and things like that, and how we can enable them? Because I think that's another thing that children that are in a school situation are just they just miss out on the creative side um and all that untapped uh talent and skill and gifts that actually our home educated children can share and make visible at a much not easier but more accessible level, and
yeah.
how we can support that.
Yeah, I know what you're saying because yeah, without getting political, with schools, there's obviously academies have focuses
Yeah,
that may not sit, if their focus is sports,
yeah,
then if you're a creative artistic kid at that school, maybe your needs aren't necessarily being met. Funding for kind of primary subjects, not primaries in school, but just as in sort of math, science, and
yeah,
English,
yeah.
as opposed to um, music, drama, whatever it might be. So yeah, there's obviously things that could stand in a kid's way. Could still happen with home educated kids, but yeah, definitely for us in our lived experiences, we are creative types. Me and my wife both play in bands.
Mm,
Our daughter will walk around singing our songs, and that's quite a funny,
excellent.
a funny thing to hear.
Does she
Uh,
sing them loud enough for the neighbours to hear? Because that's what you
um,
could do.
yeah, that's it. We need to get her singing louder. But she adds different melodies. She adds yeah, adds melodies that you
Does
wouldn't
she do
think of.
mashups? My son used to do mashups. So I'd write a song and then he'd sing like a nursery rhyme over the top, and I'd be like, I'm not here for this at all. I like
There
a
you go.
mashup, but no.
Well, that's the sort of thing that does well on TikTok and social media these days. So a kid doing a mashup could be the route to visibility for
Well, yeah, there you go. See, you're welcome.
we might get more views from our yeah, might get more views from our 6-year-old singing it badly than us performing it correctly at a venue or something. But yeah, no, I do think that one thing that you can do with home education, I mentioned it about sort of Sky Brown's an example. There's people like Billie Eilish, the singer. I
Mm,
know that she's sort of she was home educated. She had the space to develop what she was good at. There's a lot of things
mm,
I come from sort of like an office world in my day job, and you have things like focusing on strengths. So you don't necessarily um, need to focus on your weaknesses. If you can
mm,
focus on your strengths, they could be your unique selling points. They're the
yeah,
things that you can lean into rather than trying to be a great all-rounder. And I think that maybe home educating does allow for a bit of that. It
yeah.
allows us to dedicate time. If our daughter has just watched the Olympics and wants to be the next gold medal winning skateboarder or BMXer or break dancer, that was in the Olympics this time, wasn't
Yeah,
it? Or
yeah,
breaking, not
yeah.
break dancing. Um, we could allow that time in her schedule. She could be at the skate park every day. Now, at the minute, she's not necessarily chosen in that sense, so we
Hmm.
just make sure the options are open and available to her. But yeah, you're right. There's the creativity can be leaned into and it can be allowed to shine because we can give her that space and time to develop in that. And I'm not saying that it's not something kids in school can do,
Mm.
but she probably has
There's more scope for it,
it's more
isn't there?
scope, it's
Yeah,
less structured.
yeah.
We can allow time for that and pick up, we can pick up some maths in an evening
Mm,
if she's used the daylight hours to go skateboarding to get really good at that.
yeah.
Brilliant, and sometimes people can be cynical around things like that and oh, are you focusing on the wrong things? But then when everyone's cheering along to like their favorite band or somebody winning a gold medal, nobody's sat there thinking, "Oh, have they put too much time and effort into that creative or
You're
um,
absolutely right. Yeah.
what could have been a hobby?"
Wonder what their maths GCSE result was.
Exactly, and I'm not saying
Yeah.
yeah, it's not that that's not important, but
Yeah.
actually there isn't just one way of doing it. There isn't just one way of succeeding in life. If you get straight A's at A levels, does that make you an Olympic gold medalist? Does that make
Mm,
you a chart-topping singer?
mm,
Probably doesn't, does it? Going on the X Factor at one point was more
mm.
likely to get you a sort
Definitely
of
a
a
way of getting you
career.
visible. Well, now it's just straight reality TV, isn't it? If you
Yeah,
can.
YouTube channels and
Yeah.
things. But yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, in terms of the book, it's there to try and put this forward. It's tried to be on the bookshelf next to all those other um great books that are out there
Mm,
that are teaching people about a life that they might not live but might not
yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
And just trying to get it out there through this Kickstarter campaign coming on podcasts like this and just trying to say, give it a look.
Mm.
Uh, we want to get it in people's hands. We're not gonna. I've got a day job. I'm not doing it to get rich. It's not going to. It's to get it printed and to get people reading it.
Yeah,
Because
it's
I
to
don't.
start that visibility of, oh no, who knows what might happen in the future. I will go back to that in a minute, but in the spirit of visibility, because I don't know myself, are there particular things that as a home educator you do still have to do in terms of like government guidelines or anything? Because I think these are the kind of questions that people may not know about from the home
Yeah, and
educating point of
it's
view.
it's a really weird one. And again, I'll keep avoiding getting political on
Yeah, that's sure.
anything. But the law is that a child will be educated in school or otherwise,
Yeah.
and or otherwise, I could be paraphrasing that, don't
Uh-huh.
quote me on it. But the or otherwise is basically everything else, everything that fits under home educating
Mm.
and what have you. So, um, the first thing is there is no one way of doing it. Nearly every home educator that we know will have a different opinion on, how they do things.
Yeah.
We tend to do a lot of making sure that Mini is kind of staying up to speed with what a school would expect in terms of written English reading
Yeah.
level, things like that.
Mm.
But there are people who follow different models. I think there's a Scandinavian model of
Mm.
learning where kids don't really get formally taught to read until they're
Yeah.
7.
Yeah. Yeah. Is
Um,
that in particularly in Finland and places
I
like that?
think
They're
so,
not
yeah.
taught to
And
read, are they, until they're about 7?
that's it. And in
Mm.
some countries, that's the standard. That's
Yeah.
in school, they aren't taught that. So
Mm.
you could get into heated debate with somebody about whether or not your child of 6 or 7 should be able to read or not.
Mm.
In Finland, that would be fine. Over here, it would be seen as they've
Mm.
fallen behind. So um, that's one of the trickiest things because there isn't a government guideline on what a home educator should do. But it
Mm.
also means that it can be very hard for a home educator who has chosen a path that they believe works for their child to be acceptable to a local council, local education authority looking in at what they are doing. So
Yeah.
it's one of the reasons with visibility we do share a lot of what we do on social media and things to almost say, look at the depth and wealth of experiences and education that our
Mm.
daughter is getting, because there is a real worry that somebody could turn around and say that isn't the right way to do it, and therefore ultimately there is uh, process where you can be forced to send your kid to a school if you are deemed by a local education authority
Mm.
to not be giving them an adequate or appropriate education. And like I say, the fact that other, you know, other European countries can have a very different way of
Yeah.
approaching it shows you that officially through a government mandated way of learning, it can differ from with our
Mm.
neighbours. So yeah, it's a tricky one. It's a tricky path to walk because um, you don't want to be you don't want to be seen to be doing things wrong, but you're taking a conscious decision to do things in a
Mm.
certain way. So yeah, that's a very tricky that's one of the trickiest things with home educating
Yeah.
is wondering if you're doing the right thing because
Mm.
it's hard to see visibility of others doing the same.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
a lot of home educating is forming family and community with others doing
Mm.
similar. So
Yeah.
we spend our days at groups, um, farm schools and forest schools and
Mm.
art classes and kind of activity groups,
Yeah.
board gaming session, all sorts of things that are being arranged within the community.
Mm.
Because the other thing that you're probably thinking of that people often ask is if you get any funding and things like that, and the short answer is no. So
Yeah.
you don't. Schools get funding if a
Yes.
child goes there.
Mm.
There isn't a scheme where you say I'm not sending my child to school, I'm home educating. Can I have the funds that would have gone to the school for it?
Mm,
So you make a lot of compromises in your life because you are sort of paying out of pocket for a
mm.
lot of things that might come as
So
part
it's
of the
very
school.
much a lifestyle choice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because, yeah, as you said, you're choosing to do life
Mm,
completely differently. That's interesting. You see, that's why it's been so important to have you on here, because I think, as you said, a lot of assumptions are made. And in my experience, really not very negatively.
mm,
Mainly that people wish that they could do that. I know certainly over the COVID times, there were so many people that are saying, oh, no chance, I'm never ever going
mm.
to home educate my child after this, because it is so difficult, and you really do have to be have a really strong family unit
I
to be able to.
yeah, I think that's a good point, and one of the first things I mentioned, I think, about sort of in COVID, and what you have to realize about that is people are trying to do their day jobs generally
Yes,
in a weird way because they
yes,
might have been at home, and
mm,
then having to educate their kids on
yes,
top of that.
yeah,
When you choose to home educate,
yeah,
you've made those allowances
yeah,
and things. You've made the space, you've made the time, you've worked out if one person has to work part time or both of you have to work part time or one of you doesn't work and the other,
yeah,
so you've made those decisions. And that's where I say the way people had to homeschool
mm,
during COVID is very different to choosing to home educate.
yeah,
So yeah, that's definitely a thing. But I think the two things I hear most of all are yeah, people say I could never do it, and
mm,
you know, you don't have to be an expert in everything. I don't think teachers tend to be experts in everything.
mm.
If you're a if you're a new
Often you learn.
teacher,
When I was a teacher, you learn while you were teaching.
exactly,
Learned so
and
much. Yeah,
and that's it. Yeah, that is great to hear you say that because I think that's a conversation I've had before, and people sort of think it delegitimizes it.
yeah.
Oh, how can you teach your child
If you don't, yeah.
about the Egyptians if you don't know anything about the
Mm,
Egyptians? Well, I don't think teachers necessarily know everything about everything in their
mm,
subject matter area, if it's history, something like that.
yeah,
They will learn it to teach it. They will
yeah,
learn it alongside. They
yeah,
will take questions away and come back with answers, and that's exactly what you do as a
yeah.
home educating parent as well. So,
Yeah. And there's a
um,
real joy in that, isn't it? That family learning together.
yeah,
There's less about the teacher saying, I know all this and I'm imparting it to you poor children, and more about, oh my goodness, shall we learn this together? Let's go and,
yeah.
you know,
That's it. There's so many things like that. I mean, one of the positives of home educating, and this is what people who are listening that have kids in school will not like me for saying, but we can go on holiday during term time without any issues. So we've got a big holiday planned in September, almost as a kind of, and it's a learning experience when we
yeah,
go there. But yeah, that's one of that is a positive. You're flexible, you're not necessarily
yeah,
tied to school timetables in that
yeah,
sense as well. But yeah, it's the other thing that I often hear as well is about socializing, and I think that that's one of those things where hopefully the book portrays some of that,
yeah,
but
yeah.
people have this expectation that it's sitting at home
Yes,
doing
absolutely. And you don't
workbooks
see anybody, and yeah.
and socializing. Like my daughter will see different groups of kids. The groups of kids in home education tend to be varied. So she's not just with other 6-year-olds. There
Mm,
may be some who are a bit younger than her. There may be some that are older. She's
mm,
got friends who are 9 or 10. Um, and I think that that variety of experience with
yeah,
those other kids, and she's not seeing the same kids day in, day out because
yeah.
today we were at a forest school over on the other side of the city with a completely different set of kids she'll see tomorrow.
Mm,
Um, and so the variety, she's making these bonds with kids of different ages. And I think that home ed kids do end up having a different interaction with adults as well because
yeah,
they tend to have adults along for the journey a bit more. So I find that again, not as a comparison, but my daughter does speak well with adults. She
Mm,
sort of speaks on a level with adults
yeah.
and vice
Well,
versa.
it's that co-learning, isn't it? So
Yeah,
instead of being, I'm not saying teachers talk down again. A lot of the teachers that I know are absolutely brilliant, but the perception that you talk down to a child in order
yeah,
to teach them
yeah.
is just different. It's like you're more on a level.
Yeah, and so she's more used to that, and now we've always one thing we've always done. She's always been in as many extracurricular classes as we can, swimming and gym and ballet and you name it. So
Mm,
she does get those experiences, rainbows. So she's in all these sorts of things that kids in school also go to,
yeah.
where she is in a big group of kids with a teacher or a tutor,
Mm,
and so she is still getting
yeah.
uh, that
That
life
adult led.
skill.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is still
Hmm.
getting that experience. But yeah, like I say, I think the daytimes in general, compared to being in school, mean that the diversity of adults she's interacting with, the diversity of children she's interacting with, and the diversity of conversations and interactions and environments she's in,
Mm,
um, always makes me laugh when people ask like, "Oh, how do they socialize?" Because you sometimes want to turn it back around and say, "Well, how does your kids socialize in a situation where they're
mm,
only mixing with 6-year-olds
yeah.
for the majority of their
Much. Yeah.
days
Yeah.
and one or two adults
Yeah.
between 9 and 3 or time wise." So not as a dig, but as a funny way to turn it back
Yeah.
around and go,
Yeah.
oh, and again, that's the visibility thing, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's showing them that, you know,
Yeah.
that
You're
there's a
making other
yeah.
people visible to your daughter as well, aren't you? And
Mm.
we need to bring the conversation to a close, but I'm very, very much hoping that what this actually does is just blow it wide open and start lots and lots of conversations as a result of this.
Yeah.
Um, so what we always do, Brendan, is we always have a challenge for the listener. So, I mean, I think the main challenge would be to find out about what Brendan and Kate, his wife, and their daughter are doing with Home Ed Fred. And we'll pop all the details on the show notes. We'll try and get this out. It will probably be uh, in a week or so's time,
Hmm.
but meanwhile, I will use the fact that we've talked about it to start getting it more visible to the people that listen. Um, but also over the summer holidays, as we are in at the moment, what could you do to make home education a bit more visible for your child over the summer? Is there something that you could maybe do or point them towards that you might not necessarily have thought about? So it's just a bit of a challenge for listeners. Obviously, those that aren't living with children, you might know of a child, or you might just want to understand a bit more about home education for yourself. So that's our little challenge. Brendan, anything to add to that?
I think I'd just say, yeah, through summer holidays, there's a lot of holiday clubs and things like that,
Mm,
and like my daughter goes along to some of those sorts of things. So yeah, it might be that there's already home ed kids attending things that your child goes to. My daughter goes to Rainbows. I think she's
yeah,
the only home educated kid in the group, but
right.
if there is a kid, yeah, they'll probably be happy to chat about it because they'll know about school. But if you don't know
Mm,
about their home education and their journey, it's probably a lot more exciting than chatting to another kid that goes to another school.
yeah, brilliant. Right. So the only last thing to do is I always do an on the spot poem, Brendan. And I just
Yes.
suddenly thought, oh my goodness, why did we choose the word visibility? That's an absolute nightmare to rhyme.
I'm sorry. Visible. That's a
Yeah, yeah, because
shorter
that's
name.
easier to rhyme. So you come up with 10 words to rhyme with visible, and I'll write you a poem.
I'll come back next week if you like, and then I might
Thank
have
you.
thought of them.
Right, just give me a minute. Visibility is so important. What you see about me. And suddenly somebody sees something new, something they can do, and they use their creativity to make that visibility come alive with pictures and drawings and words on a page. And it doesn't matter your age, you learn and you grow and you show each other how to do life together. And together, things become that little bit more visible. That's all you're getting.
Fantastic. Oh, that I've listened to some of the episodes, and like I think I listened to your one with Errol a couple of weeks ago,
Oh, yeah.
and yeah, his reaction when you did it, I feel the same. To see you just to hear it just form a poem form in front of me is that was quite a special moment. I like that. That was
You're
great.
so welcome, Brendan. Thank you so much. And as I said, I know, you know, there's so much we were talking about, and we cut it a little bit short. But what I'm hoping is this is just the beginning of some really great conversations in the future. So thank you for your time today.
Thanks a lot, Carol. It's been great.
Thank you.